32. I was informed by Mr. Emmett, prosecution for the state of New South Wales, that I did not need to watch the YouTube videos, but the, quote, gesture each time was a physical gesture consistent with hanging. That gesture, as far as I'm aware, would have been grabbing a fist up near the back of your head and using the tugging up motion. 31. Mr. Emmett also drew attention to this part of a similar YouTube presentation in May 2020. Quote, "We're gonna give everybody a choice to be loyal to your kingdom. Make your oaths back to the Kingdom of Australia, or there will be consequences for your treason." And the consequences will range from mild, being you're going to leave the country, you're going to leave it behind, and you're going to have no recourse to the very strong, and that is that some of you might find 3 minutes 26 makes gesture a rope getting very tight around your neck and your feet dropping out from underneath you, and that rope going taut and snapping your neck. Now I know I say very callously, but believe me, there are some of you that deserve it, and those of you that deserve it will be getting it. Some of you might only be spending your life in jail, like Ivan Milokovic, I think his name was, for war crimes. So things are changing, quote. Personally, that's not something that I would say. It's been proven by this court record that it is an allowable thing to say given the circumstances that lie on the table with the rules that appear on that table. So there is this recognition of this body, this United Kingdom of Australia. And from my point of view, this is not something that any of you should be acting like, but in this circumstance, I can see that putting something on the court record so vividly is beneficial. So provoking a response is something that might be a good thing. And now that that response has been recognized, and that this so-called organization is deemed to be peaceful in nature, it has brought out from the shadows this modus operandi of the state itself and the use of state enforcement to get that done. And then we refer to a second presentation. 30 Senior Counsel for the plaintiff, Mr. Emmett, placed emphasis on a particular recurrent gesture he says that the defendant made in some of his YouTube material. In a presentation on 27 July 2020, the defendant outlined certain activity that was to take place on 31 July 2020 and made reference to a document that had, quote, not been released yet, and then says this. And I said it puts the police on notice. So whether they choose to take notice of it or not, it certainly puts them on notice. They choose to go against that, well, hey, it could end up, being a bit of this action for them makes gesture. Or actually, I'll say it would be more likely end up with that sort of action for them because they're armed. Now, I won't keep going. There's another quote from this other part which says, "You need to honour your oath, but you can change that oath just by making another oath. Your oath back to God voids all other oaths. You're serving a foreign crown, a foreign God against your own people." That's a very important quote, okay, because this demonstrates that it's a little bit more than sovereignty, in that the God is now linking those that laid down their lives so that you may have what they're taking away from you at the moment. This very premise of a Commonwealth of Australia, owned by the people for the people. It's now owned by the WEF, and you'll own nothing and you'll enjoy it. Remember, these two videos, as we have come to realise through this case, have petered out for the police as some sort of reliable activity on which to frame some sort of threat incident. Both these videos have been demonstrated to have kept within the boundary of international law and demonstrated very clearly that these consequences are a liability to those that have sipped from this poison chalice. And this is where we come to this very specific, poignant part of law, wherein we can now define what is curial and what is not. So going back in time, we jump another slide backwards as well, and we see that Dewar is in an ERISP interview, electronically recorded interview with Detective Senior Constable Gatwood regarding an email sent 7th of May 2020, at which this email is quoted pertaining to the military occupation of our Kingdom of Australia and a foreign crown pretending to be our proper crown. So there are very specific claims that have been made that haven't been rebutted. And that's the key point here that the Justice has pointed out in the police's argument or claim for this extended supervision order, that they haven't been able to define the reality in Ewer's claim. So Ewer goes on to talk about the Australian Treaty Series, Hague 4 War on Land, military occupation, Australia Day coinciding with the ratification of these Hague treaties back in 1910. Quoting from that, Article 1, the contracting powers shall issue instructions to their armed land forces which shall be in conformity with the regulations respecting the laws and customs of war on land, which include international humanitarian law at Rule 92, which we've alluded to already during this series. We also have a defined but miswritten statement of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's spelt island like a island in the sea rather than Ireland, being the St Edward's Crown. So there are some misquotes from the police. 28. He was asked questions about the role of the military tribunal he was referred to. Now, we must remember that the police themselves quoted the term military policing or wartime policing. They have a recognition already of what is being discussed here, and more so than Ewer. And that is where they're trying to use the court record to trip Ewer up instead of be honest to the court. 28. This military tribunal he has referred to. Question 217. So he's in an electronic interview and he's being recorded. This is the 217th question that he's been asked by police. So how many hours is this going around and around and around to get the same answers, and then define this from this 217th time? I was just going to ask what would happen to one of your members if they acted outside the military tribunal, if they went ahead and hung the police. Answer: oh, they wouldn't be one of our group, that's for sure. No, they'd be the United Nations that knocked on your door and said, oi, are you breaking some sort of international humanitarian law that you agreed to operate by while you administered these people?